Instead of being pleased by piety and virtue, these gods wipe out the best mankind has to offer. Oedipus is a picture of what is most virtuous in a man. He demonstrates his courage by defeating the monstrous Sphinx, by unwinning the throne of Thebes and the hand of her widowed queen. Oedipus is a courageous survivor, or savior. But the gods, from time of his birth, are set on poisoning and destroying his family. Like the deceptive oleander, which looks like a normal attractive flower, these gods bear some similarity to the true god, but in the end they are seen to be massively different from the true god. Not many of the exact attributes of the gods who torture Oedipus and his family are seen in the Theban Trilogy. For the most part, the gods are conspicuously absent. Still, much can be learned from them. They are like the true god in that they display power. They also predict the future and bring their plans to fruition. This, however, is where the likeliness ends. The most striking difference is that the gods of Oedipus are almost the moral opposite of the true god. They are unrighteous, unholy, and unjust. They use their power to destroy their followers. Virtue, instead of inflicting praise and blessings, brings wrath and destruction from these demonic gods. Their purposes are unknown and unknowable, so these mute gods have their followers to stumble in darkness, while they themselves place stumbling blocks in the paths of their blind and blinded worshippers. Another telling of difference is the lack of anything resembling convent between the gods and their followers. Oedipus can never be sure of what the gods want. He can never find a place of safety. Even at Colonus, when death is near, Oedipus has little comfort. The gods rule, but they keep their wishes private and destroy men for their own hidden reasons. In Colonus, Oedipus does refer to the gods as being eternal and unchangeable. From this he draws the conclusion that the gods are the only ones who can be trusted, while man is constantly changing over time. While Oedipus is right to see the weakness in men, his assessment of the divine is certainly questionable. While eternality and immutability, i.e. unchanging nature, mean that the gods could be trustworthy, their actions certainly prove otherwise. The attributes contained with their wretched character makes the reality that confronts people of this play even more hopeless. These gods are given the title immutable and eternal. They are also powerful, but they are wicked. A powerful, wicked god who will last forever and never change truly represents a philosophical worst-case scenario. These gods demonstrate themselves to be irrationally wicked. They carefully plot the destruction of Oedipus and his family, causing even sensible actions by the characters who are attempting to avoid parricide, the murder of a parent, and incest to lead both of these sins. Oedipus' sins did not bring this prophecy to be, for it was uttered over his birth. These gods gave no explanation or reason for their hatred of Oedipus. What is worse, even after Oedipus blinds himself, the gods supply no explanation or justification for their horrid actions. These gods are twisted deities that wreck the lives of their followers for sport. Giving no law or instruction, the hidden gods of the Theban Trilogy leave the people to wander in darkness. Oedipus is punished for a sin that he did much to avoid. He tries valiantly to please the gods by avoiding the prophesied defilement. The gods, however, speak in a manner that confuses Laius, Jocasta, and Oedipus so much that not only are they unable to avoid the defilement, they actually cause the very corruption they are hoping to circumvent. The gods' secret will, what they are causing to happen in the world, and their revealed will, what they call people to do and be and avoid, are caused and opaque. They give no clear teaching and lead to their followers into disobedience. The view of man that the Theban Trilogy presents is one that shows man to be a slave of the gods, inevitably drawn to accomplish the vile will of the deities who reign supreme. These deities, like the beautiful oleander, capture the attention of unsuspecting and draw them into their harm and destruction. Man is left with no clear standard of righteousness. There is no law or objective standard for Oedipus to follow. He understands that parricide, killing his father, and incest, marrying his mother, are to be avoided, but the gods draw him into these perversions by their trickery. The standard of righteousness communicated to Oedipus is unclear, and he is determined only by men thinking through vase utterances of riddling oracles, or by applying their own imperfect standards. The type of human morality that these ghostly gods expect remains as hidden as the danger of oleander to the unsuspecting child. These gods fail to make known what pleases them. They tell them little, and which they say is unclear and unavoidable. Oedipus stumbles forward his doom and the fulfillment of the prophecy simultaneously. What do these gods want? None of their followers are sure. Their reason for making the prophecy known is not so that Oedipus can avoid it. Try as he might, this proves impossible. The gods delight in showing their destructive powers over their human slaves. Even more shocking, the gods make no clear entrance into the story to justify themselves or their incomparable actions. There is no comfort for Oedipus or Antigone. There is no peace for them either. They travel through this cursed world as slaves of the mute and vicious gods, only to die hopeless deaths. All the while, gods are absent, demonstrating that they neither owe nor plan to give a definite defense of their actions against the family of Oedipus. Strikingly, the Theban Trilogy Sophocles demonstrates how a pagan would deal with the problem of predestination. The story of Oedipus shows a man at the mercy of the gods. This man is condemned not only for conscious rebelling against standards of righteousness. He, in fact, spends his life trying to remain righteous and avoid the sins prophesied concerning him. Still, the gods drag him down into wickedness, brokenness, and destruction. For their motivation, the gods gives no answer. They destroy Oedipus because that is what they want to do. Ironically, the true God often faces changes of unfairness when it comes to the issue of predestination. This objection comes so naturally to the lips of sinful men that Paul deals with it in Romans 9 verse 19 to 21, saying, "You will say to me then, why does he still find fault? For who has resisted his will? But indeed, O man, who are you to reply against God? Will the thing formed say to him formed it, why have you made me like this? Does not the potter have power over the clay, from the same lump to make one vessel for honor and another for dishonor?" Basically, Paul voices the complaint that sinners make, saying that God controls all things. How can I be held guilty for my sins? Paul answers by telling men that they do not have to have the moral standing to even ask God what he is doing. Our relationship to our Creator is linked to the relationship between the potter and the pottery he creates. His rights over it are total and need not be defended. How then is the true God only different in this than the Greek gods? Both predestine, both condemn some. It seems that the Greek gods condemn all. The difference, however, is obvious when we consider the distance between creatures and Creator and the space between sinners and a holy God. The stark difference does not exist between the Greek gods and their subjects. In Hesiod, one sees that the Greek gods themselves are creations of the natural world. One also sees that they are at least morally flawed as the people who serve them. They are powerful but not holy. They are massive but not righteous. When a sinful man is faced with the predestination of the Greek gods, he had a little hope. These wicked beings did whatever their perverse hearts desired. In the real world, the world of the true God, people face a much different situation. The true God is holy and just. Sinners have no right to question his decisions because they have no moral equality with him. He is righteous, he is just. He does not condemn sinners because they failed to jump through some unseen hoop, nor does he punish them in hell because they were straining so hard to do good, while he pushed them into evil. He condemns sinners because they have rebelled against his statutes and justice. They receive only what they deserve. The Greek gods know of no such righteousness. The original moral and intellectual powers of a man are still evident through Oedipus, although they are weakened and twisted. Oedipus demonstrates a great deal of virtue. He is especially blessed with courage and intelligence. He demonstrates a measure of righteousness when he has the courage to face down the terrible Sphinx. In this, Oedipus' intelligence becomes apparent. When everyone else has failed to stop the plague, Oedipus alone is able to solve the riddle and save the city. He also demonstrates his virtue by being willing to leave the people that he is supposed to be his mother and father to avoid any possibility of fulfilling the prophecy. Oedipus knows and understands much truth. His quick mind outwits the Sphinx. He is also able to track down the killer of lies when given that task. One might ask, what is the origin of Oedipus' virtue? Certainly his gods are not the source of it. They themselves fail against any righteousness that could be given to them. By seeking to avoid evil and do good, and by constantly demonstrating virtue, Oedipus provides himself to be a virtuous man. At this point, Sophocles the poet has a problem. The gods that rule his thinking cannot produce in man the virtue that is needed to make Oedipus a sympathetic hero. Those gods instead turn righteousness into a joke, choosing to pull down and destroy those who are the most courageous and sinful. These unpredictable gods could neither keep nor create any stable standards for righteousness and ethics. Sophocles, however, lived in a world where undeniable virtue surrounded him in every day. He would have known and looked up to brave men who fought in Marathon and Salamis. The goodness and righteousness of these courageous warriors would have been evident to Sophocles, but the fact that his righteousness did not come from the gods he knew was equally clear. No doubt unknowingly, but wisely, Sophocles borrowed from a biblical worldview to create his tragic tale. In the courageous, righteous actions of Oedipus, Sophocles recognizes the outlines of the law of the true God, which by God's common grace still resides through merit on the hearts of men. Because of conscience and love of parents, Oedipus flees sin. Because of a love for the truth, Oedipus searches ceaselessly for the king Lausius' killer. Because of courage, he faces down the dreaded Sphinx. All of these virtues were alive and present in the Greek society of Sophocles' day, although the Greek worldview cannot explain them nor produce them. The God of the Bible, however, gives his gifts liberally even to those who are far from him. By making Oedipus a virtuous man, Sophocles is inconsistent with his own worldview. This inconsistency, however, makes the story indefinitely better. He makes Oedipus a man whom by all audience would recognize as unquestionably good. By demonstrating how the gods wreck this ideal man, he highlights both the vicious evil of the gods and the hopeless condition of man, thus creating a massive catharsis where the sad emotions are purged away. Unfortunately, Oedipus is the most ignorant of that which he should know best. Oedipus, as Thereseus notes in lines 413 to 415 of Oedipus the King, does not understand his own identity. This one bit of ignorance leads him to his own and his family's destruction.